Okay, hello everybody.
Hi.
Hopefully we're
Yeah.
live. We'll soon find out in a minute.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm Jen and I'm really excited today because this is the first of the live sessions of the first ever HSP Extrovert Awareness Week. So before I introduce my special guest, I just wanted to give you a little bit of info as to I know what I haven't done. Sorry, I better go live here. This is the step I missed. See, this is what happens when you try and do technology and organise these things all over the place. Okay, so we're now live streaming. Excellent.
There we go.
So I'm going
Yay.
to do that intro again because so the people watching the recording are probably going to get it twice. But anyway, I'm Jen. I'm really excited because this is the first ever HSP Extrovert Awareness Week, and this is the first of my special guest interviews. But before I introduce my very special guest, I just wanted to go through a little bit about kind of what this is about and why I did it. And sorry if I seem a bit distracted, but my screen's doing all crazy things because I think it's finally actually going live. Yes, it is. Tested that. Excellent. Okay, so why did I do a HSPE awareness week? A couple of reasons. One is because those who know me know that part of my mission in this world is to educate the rest of the world about how amazing HSP extroverts are. And the second reason is because a lot of my ladies have talked to me about um, their loved ones not understanding them, or how do they explain things to their loved ones. So I thought, well, this awareness week could be an opportunity to do both. Help spread the word about HSP extroverts, celebrate how unique and amazing we are, as well as give the opportunity for all my audience to invite their friends and family so that they can get a bit of a better idea and a bit of an understanding about us as well. So that's where this thing kind of came from. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I've got quite a weird background going on when I'm at home. I like having a nice background. So when I don't have a nice background, I like addressing it. And it's also a bit of a interesting story. So at the moment, I am living on the road in my caravan traveling around Western Australia. I should have said in our caravan with my fiance, but he's actually away at work at the moment for a couple of weeks. So that's why my background is quite random. But I like telling that story because it's really exciting to be able to do this, to be able to have a business where I can work from the road. So we've been traveling for almost 7 months now, which is crazy to me that how quickly the time went. We're actually nearing the time when we're going to start heading home for Christmas. So we're actually only in the last couple of weeks of our trip. So that's why I've got kind of these random things around me. It's because I'm in my little caravan. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Only just really as an excuse to tell you the story that I'm living on the road. But anyway, without further ado, I'm now going to introduce you to my very special guest, Sara Lopez. Now, Sara is a Reiki healer and holistic therapist from Vermont in the US. So this is another really cool thing about this, is I'm in Australia, Sara's in Vermont, and we're doing this. So yay for technology. She's the founder of Empath Magic, a digital community of empaths dreaming and achieving big. The mission of Empath Magic is to inspire and motivate empaths to create focused transformation. And I'll share Sara's website in the event once we finish this video so that you can find her and catch up with her if you decide you are an empath, or maybe you already know you're an empath and you want to connect with Sara after this. So that's Sara in a nutshell, but I'm going to actually let her introduce herself and share a little bit about her story. So Sara, if you wouldn't mind taking it away and just kind of letting us know, how long have you known you're an empath? How did you get from kind of there to here? Anything you want to share with people who are watching?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I just wanted to say, Jen, I think that's so cool that you're caravanning and working from the road. It's just been a dream of mine, and you're just living my dream, and I just think that's so cool.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
made a lot of people envious, I think, when I've been posting all
yeah,
my pictures.
I think you have too. So cool. I
Thanks.
love it. Yeah, absolutely. So I really haven't known I'm an empath that long. It's not like something I knew about when I was a child or anything. I I mean, looking back, I think people would tell me I was too sensitive. So I kind of knew I was very sensitive. I had no idea what an HSP was, but I was always that kid that, on a school field trip would run away because I couldn't be around so many people. It was overwhelming and could end up being draining just really I was always felt like I could feel other people's emotions strongly and just absorbing the things around me, my environment and kind of the emotions or just state that people were in affected me a lot. And I didn't really understand that though. And no one ever told me about HSPs or empaths. And then really, I had a lot of anxiety that I struggled with all through my teens and 20s, 30s. And, I tried going to different doctors and biofeedback and all different kinds of things. And it really clicked when I learned about HSPs and empaths and realized that wait, there really is nothing hugely wrong with me. It's just that I process things differently, and also that I need to learn to protect my energy better. And I think those two things just really were a turning point for me. I was really at a point where I could barely work. I mean, I remember my boss writing a bad review about me, and it wasn't that I was a bad worker, it was just that the overwhelm was and anxiety was so huge. So, really, I mean, a lot of different things I think shifted, but I think one of the biggest ones that affected me as an empath was feeling like I wasn't worthy of either putting myself out there or just having a successful relationship, many different things, and self sabotage. I would end up sabotaging good things a lot. And I think that's something that affects empaths a lot because empaths are often have learned caretaking and putting other people's needs first at a young age. So we have to get over that it's really a false belief that we're only worthy if we're taking care of someone else.
Yeah, I think that's so cool,
Yeah.
and I'm nodding along because I think everything you're saying, most of us can relate to. If for all
Yeah.
the HSP extroverts that are watching, and in particular, I
Mhm.
think the whole when we realize that we do actually fit into this category of people, that is a big realization for so many of us, where we kind of go, oh, okay, so there isn't anything wrong with me, which is what I've been
Yes.
thinking for most of my life. But
Yes.
it's actually, I'm one of these people. And everything that you're saying, I think there is, and this is why I wanted to talk about this topic, because there is a big overlap, obviously, between HSPs in general and empaths.
Mhm.
So we're going to be talking as we get into this a little bit about the differences. That yeah, everything you say about not being worthy, being the caretaker, that's a lot. That's the same for HSPs as well. And I think that's why
Mhm.
I do a boundaries challenge, a free 5 day boundaries challenge, and I think that's why that is so powerful and so popular, is because of everything you're saying. Is we kind of don't learn those boundaries. In fact, we almost learn to not have boundaries because our self-worth is, we make it dependent on kind of being there for others and putting other people above us. And it's
Yes.
kind of quite often later in life where we kind of start to go, well, no, hang on a minute, this isn't working for me, kind of thing. And that's when we
Yeah.
start to kind of go, oh, okay, now we need to look into this. So
Mhm.
Before you go on any further, I just wanted to say hi to some of the people that are watching. And apologies to everybody if I'm looking down because I'm just checking the comments because that's the only way I can see them is on my phone. So we've got Melody, Heather, and Terry and Anna all here. So hi, ladies. Thank you so much for watching. Um, if anybody else is watching and hasn't commented, please say hi in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from because we love seeing how far around the world this goes. So I know these ladies. So I know one's from Canada, Heather's from Adelaide in Australia, and Anna is from, I think she's from Massachusetts as well, and so is Terry. Correct me if I'm wrong, Anna. So yeah, if you're watching this, please let us know. And any questions, any comments, please post them, and I will be able to check them as we go through. Cool. So thank you for sharing that, Sarah. So how did you go from that to kind of what you're doing now in as a business?
Yeah, so I was working full time in the public schools and loved it. I love working with students. Also, though, I feel like as an HSP and empath, working for yourself can be just easier and better in a lot of ways. And I wanted to make a career change, and also just for my own growth. I'm always just striving to just learn more about how to better my emotional health and spiritual health. So I studied holistic therapy with the Center for Healing, and then I just went through and studied Reiki and just really pretty much did every kind of alternative therapy that I could learn about and come across, really. Just my own process of healing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that because that was so helpful for you, that then was a pretty easy transition into going, okay, well, maybe I can help others. Is that kind of how it came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I did just I was actually working as a women's health coach and also along with the teaching, and I absolutely adored all the women I was working with. I just found that there was just a wall that people got to where when we were only working on their physical health, that they couldn't get past, that there was just beliefs, blocks, limiting beliefs, mostly stories, where they weren't able to go to the next step to, address their physical healing. So I needed something more, and I wanted to help them in a bigger way by addressing just some of the actually trauma they may have experienced, and helping them to move past some of the stories holding them back too.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. So that's basically what you do now, isn't it? You focus on, I think you said you focus on entrepreneurial empaths, is that right?
Yeah, entrepreneurial and empaths in general, and just helping them move past anxiety and just into a space of calm and confidence in life. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
wanted to share with everybody my story as well about the my experience with empaths, and then we'll go into the differences in our opinions. I don't think either of us would claim to be a complete expert on being
No.
an empath, other than our own experience. But I'm sure Sarah has an
Hmm.
opinion, and I definitely have an opinion as to what's the difference, what's the similarities. But in terms of
Hmm.
my journey, so I'm like Sarah, I haven't known for a very long time. I think it's probably going on 4 or 5 years now that I discovered that I was HSP extrovert. And for me, it was, and apologies for those of you who've heard this story, I'm going to tell it again. So for me, it was, I suppose, this massive light bulb moment because studying psychology, I've always been interested in obviously analysing myself. So I've been doing that for 20 plus years. But there was always that kind of missing piece. There was always something that, like, I knew that I didn't quite fit anywhere. Like I've always known I was an extrovert. That's quite obvious, I think, to most people that I'm an extrovert. But I never felt like I fit that mold completely. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, my dad actually shared with me the book Quiet by Susan Cain. Not because he thought I was an introvert by any stretch of the imagination. My dad's a psychologist as well, so he's interested in all this sort of stuff. He shared it with me because pretty much all the men in my life are very introverted. My dad, my brother, Warren, my fiance, Warren's dad, they're all very introverted. So Dad shared this book with me thinking it would help me understand the men in my life better. But I feel like I got more out of the book for myself because Susan Cain in the book talks about HSPs. She only mentions it relatively briefly, but something clicked for me and I went, oh my gosh. And so then I started researching HSPs and I went, oh my gosh, this is me. This is the missing link in me completely understanding myself. And it was amazing. And then the more I dug into it, of course, then I discovered that the majority of HSPs, about 70% of them, are introverted, which means that if you're a HSP extrovert, you're extremely unique, which means that you're about 6% of the population, which means we're only about 1 in 20. And I believe empaths are even more unique than that. So that was really amazing for me. And that's obviously how I came to this business, is because I want to, similar to Sara, it made such a difference to me that I wanted to help other HSP extrovert women, and here we are today in the first HSP Extrovert Awareness Week. So in terms of my experience with being an empath, when I was doing all my reading and all my research about HSP extroverts, the word empath kept coming up. And so I was kind of going, okay, well, what is this? What's the difference? So as I said, by no means do I think I'm an expert on empaths, but HSPs and empaths are linked, obviously. So I know a lot about HSP extroverts because that's my area of expertise. But in terms of empaths, I'm going to share my opinion. I'm going to ask Sara for her opinion as well. There isn't, from what I can find, there isn't much research, so to speak, on the differences. So it was very hard to actually find an article or a piece of research that says, okay, these are the differences, these are the similarities. So I've had to kind of do it based on my research around what empaths are and my research and my knowledge of working with hundreds of HSP extroverts. So what I think is, because put it this way, in a simple thing, not all HSP extroverts are empaths. They're very different things. In my opinion, though, all empaths are also HSP. Not necessarily extrovert, but HSP. And the reason I believe that is because I believe the difference is on the scale of empathy. So the E in the does criteria, HSPs have very high levels of empathy. The mirror neurons in our brain fire very strongly. We've got more mirror neurons than non-HSPs. Whereas empaths, if you think of it as kind of being on a continuum, so there's a sensitivity continuum, I believe there's an empathy continuum, and I think the difference is HSPs are up the high end of the empathy continuum, but empaths are even further along that same continuum when it comes to empathy. So that's the main difference, I think. And one of my clients described this very well. The way she described it is, she said HSPs can empathize very strongly with other people's emotions, but they don't feel other people's emotions, whereas empaths feel other people's emotions. So when I discovered that, then I realized that I'm an empath as well. And one of the things that, I'll finish my difference first before I tell you about my what I found really helpful. The other thing that started to come to me recently is, I think maybe the S in the does criteria as well, is that maybe empaths are more sensitive to subtleties than non-HSPs. But that's something that I've only kind of just come to in the last couple of weeks, really, since I've been contemplating this topic. But that's my opinion on what the differences between a HSP and an empath are. So in a nutshell, I think Carol, one of my clients, described it very well, and she said yeah, empaths feel other people's emotions, whereas HSPs can just empathize with other people's emotions. But
Mhm.
in terms of me being an empath, actually, no, I'll save that for when we're talking about the challenges, and I'll talk about something that really helped me. But before I do that, let's ask Sarah. What do you think? Do you agree with
Yeah,
me? Do you
I
have any
I
alternatives?
I just love this question, and you're right. When I tried to Google it too, there is not a lot of research on the differences. There really isn't. But yeah, I debated about this question. Are all empaths also HSPs, or are there a few little empaths who are not also HSPs? It's a really good question. I mean, all the empaths I've met are also HSPs, so I think, yeah, that would go with your theory. I think let's go with that. But yeah, I mean, I think with the empaths, it's really the hyper responsive mirror neurons are a big thing. And, also with HSPs too. But I think maybe with empaths is even more kind of hyper sensitive with the mirror neurons. Yeah.
Yep. And I've also had empaths explain to me, and I've felt this as well, but not as pronounced as what some of them have it, is that because with HSPs, if we're feeling a particular way, we usually know why,
Mhm.
because it might be that the person in front of us is telling us about the death of their pet. So we're
Yeah.
feeling like similar feelings to what they're feeling. Whereas
Mhm.
I know some empaths get almost random feelings that overcome them, and then they don't really know where they come from. And that's one of the big challenges they have in being an empath. And so I don't think I've ever, I'm trying to pay attention more to whether this happens to me and whether
Yeah.
perhaps my moods and my motivation levels may be related to this phenomena known as, I don't know,
Mm.
random emotions just overtaking you.
Yes.
But is that your experience as well, Sarah? Is that there's
Oh,
sometimes
yes.
you don't know where they come from?
That is my experience, and it can be quite uncomfortable. And sometimes it doesn't dawn on me after. And sometimes they're just weird emotions that I'll get and realize it's coming from someone else later on. I mean now I have a little more tools to kind of shield myself, but yeah, it can be difficult to navigate at first.
Yeah, and because I think the way it's been described to me is that, yeah, because there's no kind of link as to, okay, why am I feeling this way, that's where it becomes quite difficult to navigate, because at least when you're a HSP, you kind of know, oh, this person's upset, that's why I'm feeling awful. But if
Yeah.
you don't know why you're feeling that way, then it can be really, really challenging. Okay, so I
Yeah.
think it sounds like we agree on the differences
Yes, we
between
do.
HSPs and empaths, so that's good,
Hmm.
and hopefully we've clarified that for people watching this. And if you have any questions, whether you're watching this live, and I'll say hi to the live people in a minute, but if you're watching the recording, then please, if you have questions, let us know in the comments below, because Sarah and I will both circle back and help you out in any questions as best as we can. So yeah, so that's the main difference between HSPs and empaths. We think is that kind of empaths are further along in that empathy continuum, and maybe more sensitive to subtleties, but that's kind of something
Hmm.
I need to look into a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um, so
And
just
I think the nervous system sensitivity is the same for HSPs and empaths. We both have a really sensitive nervous system.
Yep, okay, that's good to know. Yep, so that's kind
Hmm.
of, yeah, so it does sound like, and I think that's where both of us have probably come to that conclusion that all empaths are HSPs, but all
Yeah.
HSPs are definitely not empaths, because it's kind of, it's, I always think of it as kind of
No.
like one step further in the empathy kind of spectrum. Cool.
Hmm.
Just want to say hi to a couple more people. So Shane's with us from Illinois, USA. Hi, Shane. I think she's studying at the moment, so she's multitasking. So thanks for joining us, Shane. And Jodie's here, and Heather said great so far, Jen and Sarah. Oh, thanks, Heather. Anybody else have any questions, any comments? Please drop them below. It's so nice for Sarah and I to kind of know that we're talking to other people, not just each other. Although it's not so bad
Yeah.
because it's the two of us. It's worse when it's
Yeah.
just you by yourself talking and you don't know if anybody's there. So at least we've got
It
each other
is.
to talk to.
Totally.
So in terms of the next bit that I wanted to talk about is some of the challenges that empaths have, and this is where I wanted to share a little bit more of my story, and then I'll kind of hand it over to Sarah because this is where she would have a lot more knowledge than I would. So one of the challenges we've just talked about is kind of feeling emotions, picking up energy that we're not sure sometimes where it comes from. Sometimes you know where it comes from, but it still can be quite overwhelming. So for example, I'll tell you I suppose the most confronting time I experienced this, and then I'll let you know what I have done since that has really, really helped. So one day, Warren and I were driving along a road into Rockingham, which is our closest kind of town, and we went past. You could tell there'd been an accident, and from what we could see, it was a relatively recent, like it had just happened. And basically, what had happened is a truck or a car had come out of a side street and somehow cleaned up a motorcyclist, and the person was laying on. It's coming back to me now. The person was laying on the road, and all I could feel was just this emotion just kind of took me over, and I was like shaking. I was like, oh my god, I think something really bad's happened to him, and I was kind of really, the energy was just overwhelming to me.
Mm.
And I had tears, and it was just really, really challenging to continue on we were going shopping. And then it got worse when we came back because the road was shut off. There were police everywhere, and I said they wouldn't have done this unless he died. And I kind of knew that I'm getting emotional just talking about it. I kind of knew that he had died, and that energy just was like, I don't even know how to explain it. It just kind of overtook me. And and the worst thing about it is not only in that moment was it so heartbreaking and so confronting, but every single time I drove down that road, that energy would overtake me again. It was almost as though the energy was still in that area, and every time I drove through it, it would overtake me again. So it was really, really challenging because it's a road that I use quite regularly. So I remember talking to one of my friends, and she gave me a couple of energy protection ideas. One of them was to just feel the energy and ask it to be transmuted back to Mother Earth, like visualize it just going back to where it belongs. And another thing that I found really helpful, which has literally transformed my experience of life, and I don't say that lightly because it just really has, is I had a special guest in the group a couple of years ago. Some of you would have seen the video. Sarah Jane Ashurst, I think it is. I need to check her name. Sorry, apologies, Sarah, that I forgot your last name. But she did an expert video in our free group, and she talked about energy protection. And this is what literally changed my experience of life. And I'm sure Sarah has a similar, if not same sort of thing. But really, it is, in a short version, it is putting a protection around you. And it's about waking up every morning or driving to work or whenever you want to do it. But every day I did this, I visualized this. I visualize a mesh sphere. So it's kind of metal, but energy can flow through it. But it blocks all the negative energy or the energy that doesn't belong to me. And I also visualize white light coming from source down into the circle and filling it up. So I did that every day for many, many months. And it got to the point, and this is where this is what I tell my clients as well. If you do it often enough, it has now got to the point where that sphere is always around me. So in the beginning, each day it was like it had disappeared and I had to kind of recreate it. Whereas now, because I've done it often enough, and I still try and do it every time I remember in the shower, but now it's there all the time. And that's why I say that it has literally changed my experience of life, because I am not getting that energy anymore that I used to get and I felt like I couldn't help it or I couldn't control it. So it's protected me from that. So that's one thing that I found really, really helpful. And I'm sure Sara has some like specific techniques that she can teach you as well. But that's probably the only tip I can really share in terms of overcoming the challenges of being an empath, because that's one that I've kind of worked on myself. But Sara, if you wanted to kind of share with us some of the, hang on, before you do, I just noticed that Shane had a comment. So Shane says she's a nurse. Every time someone dies at work, she can feel when their soul returns home. Oh, wow, that must be, wow, Shane, that must be, I'm hoping it's a beautiful feeling as opposed to a challenging feeling. So yeah, let us know. But yeah, wow. So I'm guessing Shane is an empath too. So thank you for sharing that, Shane. So Sara, take it away. What are in your opinion, what are the kind of main challenges faced by empaths, and do you have any tips to kind of overcome them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said just about the white light and shielding. And I just think that's so beautiful and so true, is that once, your energy field is clear, that you don't necessarily have to do that single ritual every single day. That, yeah, I love that. It's beautiful.
Thanks.
So yeah, challenges for empaths. I think one of the biggest challenges is, so, the way, whatever trauma we might have experienced as a child, and our wound basically that we're bringing into adulthood. And what happens is that we see someone else that has that same wound. Like, for example, say our wound is a false belief that we're not good enough, for example, and someone else has that same belief that's really close to us. It could be our partner or our mother or father or anybody. And we have trouble setting a boundary with that person because we feel like we're going to hurt them. They have the same wound as us. So it's like, maybe we need to cut that person out of our life even because it's somehow toxic. But we can't because we're empathizing too much with how they're feeling. So I feel like that is one of the biggest challenges for empaths. And I don't know about HSPs, but probably can be along similar lines. Yeah.
Yep.
And then, I've polled many empaths to see what are their top 2 challenges. And really the top 2 are absorbing other people's emotions, of course, we know that. And the other one is anxiety. And I think that comes from just having to, again, absorbing other people's emotions, and then overwhelm is caused, and just kind of drain from dealing with the outside world. So I think empaths as well as HSPs benefit from a lot of alone time. So I think that can be something that is really a good healing practice to put in place to work that into your life.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Sara, would you say on the anxiety front, would you say that if an empath, because anxiety is very common with HSPs as well, with the empath anxiety though, would you say that if they manage to perhaps successfully implement that energy protection, plus they got better at putting boundaries in place, do you think that would alleviate some of the anxiety? Like, is that where
huge.
it comes from?
Huge, yes, absolutely. No, it really does work, that it alleviates a lot of the anxiety. I mean, anxiety has many causes. Our gut and our brain are connected, and our vagus nerve connects them. So there is a very big physical component to anxiety. And I also believe that our mind and body are connected too. So, if we're feeling a really good sense of safety and security and peace, then that's going to help the kind of physical component of anxiety too, because the message will go to our vagus nerve and calm those inflammatory cytokines that are kind of making the brain inflammation go here and there and causing that anxiety. So our body is connected, and yes, that
Yep,
these kind of
definitely.
protection practices absolutely will help reduce anxiety. I can just give you an example from my own life is, because one of my biggest challenges really just family pushing my buttons, and I was in a long car ride with my mom unexpectedly the other week, and she locked herself out of my house. And I think also sometimes when other people are really anxious that are close to us too, as empaths, that can be super hard because it's just pushing all those little buttons that we've tried to move past. And so, for one of the first times with all the protection practices I do, I was able to completely stay in my own energy, with my mom in the car and driving around to all the places, getting her keys and that kind of thing. And it was just such a good feeling to know, someone else right next to me is super, super anxious, and I am not taking that on. It
Wow,
is possible.
that is powerful. Thank you for sharing, because I think
Yeah.
that is really challenging, is picking up on, yeah, other people, particularly if they're close to you as well. So it's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think the success stories, or the things that work, are really helpful, because I think it gives people hope that they don't have to live this way, and that there is
No.
another way. Because that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about with my HSP extrovert audience, is letting them know that yes, there are challenges that come with being HSP extrovert, same with
Mhm.
being an empath, but you can overcome them with a bit of work. But you've got to do the work, and that's kind of
Yes.
my thing that I keep banging on about, and it's going to come up throughout this week, is we've got to do
Mhm.
the work. It's no good just kind of saying, oh, well, this is how I am, I just have to suffer. You don't
Yeah.
have to suffer. Would you agree?
Mm-mm.
There's
I
ways to
do.
overcome the challenges, yeah. And then once you overcome them, that's where, to me, the true beauty of being a HSP or an empath lies, is because that's when you can really focus on the strengths and the amazingness of our trait, because it is really a beautiful trait. And I think HSPs, empaths, are beautiful people, but sometimes that's lost because they're
Mm-hmm.
stuck in the challenges. Whereas once you start to come out of those challenges and overcome those challenges, that's where you can really thrive and flourish and just love life, because you're kind of living in the strengths as opposed to being pulled down by the challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's really beautiful. I mean, empaths really have a sixth sense, and that can just be so healing for the world. Just all their, I mean, talk about a nurse, just they have so much to give once they
Mm-hmm.
overcome the challenges. I think, as far as that story, the people closest to us will try to test our boundaries the most because they feel the most comfortable with us. So, I mean, my advice for something like that, like a close family member, say, who's having a hard time or really anxious, and, when it's bringing up your stuff, is as an empath, is to just become more mindful. I think that's the very first step that really helps, is notice, you don't even have to call it being triggered. I like the word emotionally activated better.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, oh wait, my heart rate is increasing, my just like my face is getting flushed. What are the physical symptoms? And just kind of bring it back to yourself and notice. And then try to tap into, how do I feel? Like, how am I feeling in this exact moment? And just acknowledge it. And I think that brings the energy away from the other person and back to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And because we were talking about that in Connection Corner, which is my group coaching and personal development membership, and we talked about self awareness being probably the biggest skill that you can
Mm-hmm.
practice and master as a human being, but definitely as a HSP and an
Definitely.
empath. Because if you're aware of what's going on for you, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's the only way you can change it, for starters, is if you have that awareness. So I think that's what you're talking about. So that mindfulness brings that awareness and starts you paying attention to, okay, what's going on for me, which then, as you say, almost kind of separates you somewhat from the other person's stuff, which is essentially what you're trying to do. And the other thing
Yeah.
you mentioned that I wanted to bring up, because I think it's really important, is you talked about alone time and how important it is. And I just wanted to stress that because, and I think one of the unique challenges for HSP extroverts is we're walking contradictions. And I've got some videos that I'm going to release this week which talk about the does criteria explained, differences between introverts and extroverts, the strengths of HSPs. I'm going to release them all this week, so please keep an eye out for them. But in the introverts extroverts differences, those who've seen that will know that we're walking contradictions because our HSP side and our extrovert side pretty much are contradictory. Like, the
Yeah.
things that make an extrovert tick are the things that overwhelm a HSP. So alone time is very important for all HSPs, but I think extroverts tend to resist it, the HSP extroverts, because their extrovert side is kind of fighting to go out and fighting to have that external stimulation, which is what it needs. But if we can learn to respect our HSP side as well instead of fighting against it, then that can actually, that alone time is vital for us to recover from our extroverting time, because unlike non-HSP extroverts, we need time to recover after we've been extroverting. So that alone time, I think, I just wanted to pick up that piece because that is really, really important, and it's something that I think HSP extroverts in particular resist. They either resist, or the other challenge I've come across is they either resist having that alone time because they're either paying too much attention to their HSP extrovert side, their extrovert side, or they're taking on too much and they're not respecting their need for that. The other thing that can happen though is HSP extroverts who've experienced burnout, emotional crises, whatever, they can actually go the opposite way and almost retreat and have too much alone time and become almost a bit like a hermit, which is going to be just as challenging because then your extrovert side isn't feeling fulfilled, and so you're going to have that sense of something's not right, I'm not feeling completely comfortable, because your extrovert side needs that external stimulation. So it's a fine balance, and it's something that there's no kind of answer, it's just something that we have to be aware of and continuously kind of monitor throughout our life. So which part of me needs some respect at the moment? Is it my extrovert side or my HSP side? So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up about the alone time because it is super important, I think, for all HSPs and empaths, definitely.
That's amazing. I'm an introvert, so I had no idea you guys struggle with that. That's so fascinating. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and it's one of the things that I think HSP introverts in particular don't understand, but
No,
also
not at
the
all.
HSP extroverts, when I explain that to them, they go, oh, it's like this kind of light bulb moment that explains a lot of their struggles in life. And so I think thinking about those two sides to ourselves actually kind of helps us then balance them a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So just want
Love
to
it.
share some more comments. Melody says susceptible and highly suggestive to toxic projection. We believe when okay. So this is Melody suggesting another challenge of empaths. She said we're susceptible and highly suggestive to toxic projection. So we believe when someone projects negativity as being the source. Okay, so I think what she's saying is that it's almost like we think the negativity is coming from us, or they're projecting stuff onto
Mm.
us, and we don't. It's almost like we can't fend it off. We just take it on.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
again, like, would you agree with that as being a challenge? And what sort of things would you suggest would overcome that? Would help to overcome that?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think the biggest thing with that is to have a sense of safety within yourself. I think that that's the number one thing we could start with. And just a simple exercise is you can close your eyes and just imagine a time when you felt really safe in your life, and to just kind of recreate that, recreate the senses, like what it smell like, taste like, the sounds, and just really experience that again. And then to kind of anchor that into your whole nervous system, I recommend just tapping your chest. And this, it's, your thymus gland. It just brings that into your body. And then we call it a safety button. So anytime that you're feeling, not calm or things, any kind of challenges, just you don't even need to close your eyes. Even if you just activate the safety button, then it can just help a lot. And then, one thing I love to teach people, I do it every morning, and I love what you said, Jen, about you don't necessarily have to do it every day, but in Reiki, we do a practice before we do Reiki healing where it's a Japanese technique where we brush off, and it's just that physical. It's a message to your subconscious sometimes when you do a physical motion.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's like 95% of our brain is subconscious and unconscious, so it's powerful. Is you just brush along your body. So I don't want to knock off my microphone, but brush, brush, brush like that, and then over on the top of your arms and brush it off like that. And I have something I say to myself every time anyone is emotionally activating anyone or any situations. I say to myself, I release anything that no longer serves me, and I return it to where it came from with love and consciousness attached. And just that, it just gives your mind the message like that is not mine, and it's gone. And how it doesn't even have to be that phrase, whatever the phrase is for you, whatever resonates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Thank you. I've just noted those down so I can put it in the comments in the
Mm-hmm.
event. So I think they're two
Mm-hmm.
really great exercises. And just to clarify with the safety button, um, so I'm guessing from what you said that basically the going into the space where you felt really safe and
Mm-hmm.
then tapping your chest, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's like setting up the safety button so that when you use it in the future, your body takes you back to that time. Is that right? So you don't need to visualize the safe place all the time. Once you've connected the safe place and the
Mm-hmm.
tapping, that's the
Yes.
safety button set up, so that from then on you
Yes.
just need to tap and it brings it all
Mm-hmm.
back. Is that right? Am I understanding
That's
that
right.
right? Yeah, okay,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. I love
Mm-hmm.
that. I think that's a really powerful exercise. So I'll post about
Yeah.
that in the comments. So the safety button, and I love
Great.
the brush off as well. So the
Thank you.
brushing off of, yeah, I
Yeah.
think they're both really, really helpful. So thank you for sharing
Mm-hmm.
those.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. All right, let's see what if anybody else has anything to say.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think they're agreeing with my whole difficult to balance thing. And Melody says,
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's so hard to prioritize recharge. There's always something more important or exciting. Rest later. Classic HSP extrovert challenge is,
Yeah.
oh no, but I want to do this and I want to do this and I can rest later. And guess what,
Mm.
folks? If you ignore your alone time, or if you ignore your HSP need to rest and recharge, then overwhelm, burnout are not far away. So I can attest to that, because that's basically how I got sick. Is I pushed and I pushed and I pushed,
Mm.
and I never and I got sick, interestingly, before I learnt about being HSP extroverts. If I'd learnt about that before, I perhaps would have been able to stop myself. So I pushed and I pushed and I pushed, burnt my adrenals out, and I
Mm.
now have ME, chronic fatigue myalgic encephalomyelitis is the technical term,
Mm.
which I like to explain to people, because every time I say chronic fatigue, they think, oh,
Mm.
she's just tired all the time. Now it's so much
Mm.
more than that, and so much more complicated, frustrating, and life altering. But
Mm.
I share that not to get your pity. I share that because that's what can happen if HSP extroverts ignore that need to recharge, take time out, is if you push and push and push, you may end up where I am at, and I do not recommend that to anybody, because yes, I have a lot of fatigue, but the other symptoms are so much more challenging, and the most challenging part of it is the things that I can no longer do because of my illness. So we're talking things like when we were travelling into El Questro station, there are a lot of beautiful walks with amazing water holes and waterfalls at the end. I couldn't do any of them. Was had to go and do them by himself, because I have now learnt, and I'm doing this activity pacing thing, I'm not allowed to walk any further than half an hour. We were watching kite surfers when we were living on the beach for a couple of weeks. I'd love to give it a try, but I would not be able to do it because I've got a bung shoulder, but also my chronic fatigue wouldn't allow me to be able to hang on for long enough or sustain that amount of physical activity. So as I say, I'm not sharing this for you guys to feel sorry for me. I'm sharing it because you don't want to end up where I am. And I strongly believe that HSP extroverts who don't honour their HSP side and that need for rest, recharge, time out, are at distinct danger of ending up where I am. So please, please, please take it from me. Remember, if your HSP side is crying out for some alone time or some time to rest and recharge, then please respect that, because there are some significantly dire consequences if you continue to ignore it. So, yes. Anyway, let's get off the serious note. Anything you wanted to add to that, Sarah, or anything else you want to share?
Jen, I just, no, I get what you're saying. I think also, just for you personally, just be gentle with yourself, because there's a lot of, who knows why, we get chronic illnesses. But yeah, I do agree that overdoing it like that can, mess up your adrenals. But I really hate to see people blame themselves for any chronic illness. I really, really hate that.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's, because my theory is, and I suppose I don't fully blame myself, because there were external circumstances as well, that because the adrenals got burnt out, partly because there was a lot of external stress as well. But knowing what I know now, I probably would have found out a way to get away from that stress a little bit more. So I don't totally blame myself. So thank you for raising that. Because it's not, I'm not beating myself up about it.
Good.
I probably did for a bit, but what I've been working on in recent times is definitely a lot more self-compassion, and also just I focus on, I have a pretty good life. I'm very grateful the fact that I'm able to be traveling the country in my caravan. So yes, I'm limited in what I can do, but on the whole, I've got a pretty good life, and I'm just practicing, self-compassion a lot, and acceptance of my limitations, but also fighting to get better as well, because I do also think that it is something that can be reversed, even though the medical profession will tell you otherwise.
Oh, I agree with
I'm
that.
a big proponent of the alternative medicine. They know more than the
Me
medical profession.
too. Love it. Yeah. No, I completely believe that too. That's great.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for bringing that up about, me not blaming me, because I think you're right. And that's a good point. The other thing I wanted to mention on that is the other theory that I have about HSPs is, have you heard of the concept of the canary in the coal mine?
I don't even know what it means. What is it?
So, well, it's because this is, and I've talked about this a little bit more in my book, because I'm writing a book. So
cool.
because there's all my ladies keep saying there's nothing out there for highly sensitive extroverts. So I'm writing a book. I'm 16,000 words in, and it's essentially going to be kind of like a life manual for HSP extroverts. But I talk about the canary in the coal mine, and this is just a theory that I have based on all my conversations with hundreds of HSP extroverts, is that I feel like because our nervous systems are more sensitive, the canary in the coal mine, basically, when they used to, pre-technology where they could measure the amount of oxygen in the air, the miners used to take a canary in a cage down to work with them. And basically the canary was the early warning sign. So if the canary dropped
Oh.
dead, they
Mm-hmm.
evacuated because it meant that
Hmm.
the oxygen was reducing. So the canary would
Mm-hmm.
topple over before it would actually start to impact the humans. So I have a theory that HSPs are the canary in the coal mine. So we're the ones that are falling prey to all the illnesses of the 21st century that the
Mm.
just medical professionals don't know how to fix, or they don't know where they come from, because I think that it's a sign that the way society currently operates is not sustainable. So it's that whole busyness,
Mm-hmm.
go, 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 resting is lazy. The most successful
Mm-hmm.
people are the busiest people, and if you're not busy, then you're not successful. It's just this pressure, 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 busy, 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 and guess what? The canaries are falling over. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's just my theory in terms of what's potentially going on, because I have just spoken to so many HSPs who have chronic illnesses like rheumatoid arthritis, um, autoimmune conditions, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. Like, it is just everywhere. So that's just
Yeah.
something. I digress now into a totally different
No,
topic,
that
but
that's so fascinating. Yeah, I that resonates. That's really spot on.
mm,
Absolutely.
thanks. Yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah.
One day someone might give me some funding and I can do some research into it.
Yeah,
You
that
never
would be
know.
amazing. Mm-hmm. Love it. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, I think we've almost come to the end of our time. So, is there anything else, Sarah, that you kind of really wanted to mention about empaths, or anything we've talked about before we talk about your special offer that you have for everybody?
Um, no, I just wanted to talk about just I created just a fun business, and I love creating, just physically creating things, and I love wildcrafting and herbalism. And so I just combine all the stuff I love into products for empaths. So I just wanted to show you guys and show you what they are, and I have them right here. So this is an empath box, and I'll show you all the things in it. It's called Empath Magic Box, and I have an empath protection potion, and this is a pink yarrow flower essence, and aura cleansing bath potion, and just a little fun sticker that says Empath Girl Magic.
Cool.
And the last thing is a Numite crystal. And all of these things, really physical objects, are messages to our subconscious. So they help us, also just the ritual of using something like a potion is a message to our subconscious to clear our energetic line. And I think that can be really helpful for empaths. So just to give you a little more explanation, like the empath protection potion is mugwort, and mugwort is really just a protection herbal ally, and connects you with your dreams. And then in the bottom is turquoise and garnet crystals. And then frankincense, which is really just an amazing protection, really essential oil. And I get little charms from Mexico just for fun. And the heart represents just the beautiful hearts of empaths on there. And this is Numite is really one of the most ancient crystals ever. It comes from volcanoes, and just that black crystal is great for grounding and also protection. And this really is a very strong crystal for separating your energy from other people's energy and creating that energetic boundary. And so much so that they recommend, I actually, when I'm working with clients, I won't hold it. I will take it out of the room because it does, in a good way, sort of have it so that you're not really empathizing with you aren't empathizing with others so much. You can have compassion, but yeah, you're not absorbing kind of emotions or tapping into other people's kind of energy fields at all. So
Awesome.
yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you for sharing those, and thank you for reminding me as well, because I did want to talk about your products, your product line, because I
Yeah.
think it's such a beautiful gift for yourself, but also maybe for others as well. So if any of you are interested in Sarah's product line, I think there's an issue with them coming to Australia and New Zealand. So, Sarah, you're happy for them to reach out to you personally if they want to order
Yes.
from Australia or New Zealand? Yeah.
Yeah, essential oils are banned to be shipped to Australia and New Zealand. So you can receive it, but I would just take out the essential oil part and send you the products without the essential oils. So yeah, you just reach out to me if you're from those countries.
Okay, no worries. And those
Mhm.
who are in the US or anywhere else that's not banned, how can they?
Yeah,
How can they? Is it
sure.
on your website they get it, or?
Yeah, just empathmagic.com is my website, and you can order it right off of my website.
Excellent, cool.
Yeah,
Thank you for that. So,
sure. And
perfect time for Christmas gifts as well.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. And for on this call, if you use the word empath, it's a coupon code for 10% off, all
There
in
you go.
caps. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So,
Hmm.
Empath in caps, coupon
Hmm.
code for Sarah's website for 10% off. Thank you for that, Sarah. That's lovely.
Yeah, you're
Um,
welcome.
so, just to finish off, I'll just check the comments. Heather said, "Thank you. Interesting and informative. Much appreciated." Melody said, also an external act of self care, self compassion to send permission to our nervous system to recharge. Yes, very good, Melody.
Mm.
And Shane said, "Do you have a website?" So, yes, we've just covered that. So, thank you for asking that,
Hmm.
Shane. And finally, before we finish off, Sarah also has a free offer for you all. So she's got 2 free meditations to jumpstart the healing process. One is for calm and healing, and the other is for clearing old patterns. So that's at flowpath.love, and we'll share Sarah's website and the link to the 2 free meditations. I'll share them in the comments below this video as well once we've finished up. So head there to get your 2 free meditations. Head to empathmagic.com to get some beautiful products for yourself or for maybe gifts for other people for Christmas. And I just wanted to say lastly, thank you, Sarah, so much for joining me. It's been such an entertaining, interesting, enjoyable conversation. So I'm really pleased that you agreed to join me as our very first special guest on our very first HSP Extrovert Awareness Week. And it sounds like we've even educated you a little bit about the HSP extroverts as well, which is really cool because that's part of my mission in this world. So
Yes, I love this, and it was so great to meet you. And you're a wonderful host, and just so warm. And I did learn a lot. I didn't really know much about HSPEs before this at all. Yeah.
excellent, thank you. That's awesome. I'm
Mhm.
so glad. All right, well we'll finish off there. So if you do want to join us, Sarah yourself or anybody else watching, this is just the beginning of a whole range of stuff happening this week. All the stuff is going to be in the main event, so I'm going to be sharing links to videos that I've created about the does criteria, differences between introverts and extroverts, our strengths, our challenges. I'm also doing a family and friends session, so make sure to invite your family and friends along so that they can learn. I'm going to be going through kind of like the main do's and don'ts when you're in a relationship with or related to a HSP extrovert. So I have to thank my fiance Warren for helping me come up with that list because
Nice.
he was saying things like, well, when I do this, this happens. So that's going to be an interesting topic. So that's on, I think, tomorrow afternoon. But there's also live Q&As this week. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining us for this very first session. Thank you again, Sarah. And I will see all the rest of you throughout the rest of this week. So take care. I'm going to end the live now, and we'll see you all soon. Okay, stop.